Hi, fourth grade. We are going to be learning how to simplify fractions. This is our last lesson for this year, and I'm going to show you the poster that I have for you. So simplifying fractions is finding a common factor. You can use any factor, but we've learned how to use the greatest common factor, and that's the best thing you're going to want to do. Otherwise, you're going to have to keep dividing. So I've given you some examples here, how to find the greatest common factor and reducing that fraction into simplest form. So let's get started. First, I want to explain that the reason why we're going to simplify fractions is because from here on out, anytime you add, subtract, multiply, or divide fractions, you're going to want that answer in simplest form. That means it's as low as it can go, and there aren't any common factors except one between the numerator and the denominator. You always want to get to one as that common factor. So let's get started. So we have simplifying fractions as our title, and we have finding the greatest common factor. Now, finding the greatest common factor is what we practiced last week, and sorry about that. And this is what we are going to want to do this week. So it says, example 1, find the GCF, then divide. So we have a fraction here. So last week I gave you just two numbers. The numbers would have been 14 and 28, but now I am actually going to give you that in fraction form. So we're just using that fraction divide bar, and then we have to find that greatest common factor, okay? Now we have learned with the divisibility rules that if the numbers are even, 2 is always a factor. And again, if you use something that's not the greatest common factor, you're just gonna have to keep dividing that fraction until you get down to the lowest form. So I'm going to write the factors for 14. And I'm going to write the factors for 28. So as you can see, we do have a couple different common factors. We have 2, we have 7, but we have 28, or excuse me, 14, my bad. And with that 14, that is the greatest common factor. So if I did use 2, I would have to keep on dividing. So I'm gonna put 14 here in my box, and that's gonna show that those are the common factors between 14 and 28. So now when I divide, I'm gonna get 14 divided by 14 is 1. And you can see, because that's the other number that's with it, the other factor. Remember, factors are two numbers multiplied together to get a product. 28 divided by 14 is 2. And again, that's that other number right here. So our final answer is 1/2. 1/2 is as low as you can go. Let's do another problem. Our next example is 18 over 30, and these are actually the examples from the notes that you're going to see. So this is how I'm getting these examples from your notes. So 18 over 30. Again, this is a fraction. If it was other numbers, I would have given you 2 separate numbers, but I'm putting them in fraction form. So let's get our factors of 18. And let's get our factors of 30. And you don't have to list them all out on your paper. You can put them on scrap paper if you already know what it is, but you don't want to make the mistake of using the only factor you can think of and it not be the greatest, because if you're trying to simplify fractions, you want to get down to the only factor that's common between the two numbers, the numerator and the denominator, is 1. So in this case, I'm going to look and I'm going to see that I have 3, I have 2, and that's it. So, and I have 6. So 6 is going to be my greatest common factor. So I'm going to put in my box. And the reason why I put it in a box is to show you that it has to be the same on the top and the bottom. You can't use two different numbers. it's balanced, okay? 18 divided by 6 is, goodness gracious, what's my problem today? And 30 divided by 6 is 5. Again, if you're looking at 3 and 5, the only common factor between those two numbers is 1. So that's how you know you've gotten it down to the least common factor. So you've simplified your fraction. All right. So another example. And again, this is from your notes. All right. So looking at this, a lot of you might say, well, I already know what that's reduced to. That's great. If you already know, go ahead and show your factors and write that down. If you don't, then you're going to have to list out all your factors. So again, we're going to want to set up our problem so we know what it should look like. I'm going to show the factors of 9. And I'm going to show the factors of 18. Okay, now I'm going to show you what would happen if you didn't do the greatest common factor. Let's say I see 3, and I'm going to say, okay, I see that there's 3 here. So even though it's not the greatest common factor, it is a factor of both numbers. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in. 9 divided by 3 is 3. 18 divided by 3 is 6. Well, you're looking at 3, 6. That is not as low as it can go. They still have a common factor. This is where I was talking about that you're going to have to keep dividing. 3 and 6 is common factors 3. So again, you're going to have to divide by 3. So 1/2 is as low as it can go. So if you saw that 9 was the greatest common factor, then you would not have to have divided twice. But it's okay if you do. You all have to get to the same place. How we get there, we want to make it simple for you by using the greatest common factor. But again, we all want to be at 1/2. One more example. And let's go with, and this example is not in your notes, so let's go with 8 over 20, okay? Now, again, you might say, hey, I know what a common factor is. It's 2. Is it the highest? Is it the greatest? Maybe, maybe not. Let's list all the factors. So for 8, we have 1 times 8 and 2 times 4. For 20, we have 1 times 20, 2 times 10, and 4 times 5. Ooh, you can see that 4 is the greatest common factor. So again, if you use 2, you would have to divide again. So let's use 4. And looking at 2/5, the only factor in common is 1, so you know I've simplified my fraction. All right, make sure that you're showing all your work. Make sure you take your time. Make sure you list all your factors because you might miss the one that's going to get you down to the simplifying fractions to the correct answer. If you have any questions, join the Google Meet. Bye-bye.